Jen here, and I have a Wild Whisper Design Team layout for you. I'm using the Just Because collection just because I like it. I love it, actually. It's so bright and bold. It very much screams Wild Whisper to me in their use of really fun colors and bold colors. I love that they used black and white, which I think really makes all of those other colors pop. I love the turquoise and the gray together, and then that unexpected splash of yellow is just so fun. So I was really excited to start using this collection, and it's a mini collection which was released at the last quarter. So there are the papers, which I flipped through, and then there's also some flair. You can see right there on the right hand side, and there's a KaezMum Scraps exclusive sequin mix too that matches. So I'm starting by punching out a whole bunch of these squares, and here I'm just kind of putting them down to give myself an idea of how I want to arrange this on the paper. I thought that cutting this into shapes would be a great way to get all of the patterns onto one layout, which, you know, I love it. I love how bold all of these patterns are, and they match. Even though they're all different shapes and designs and feels to them, they all match in their color scheme. And so I wanted to get all of the patterns on there. So once I did that, here you can see I've just sort of given myself a general idea. I'm going to do a diamond. I picked that square shape because I happened to have a square punch that I thought was the right size, and I wanted to sort of do maybe some layered embellishments. I've seen lots of people do beautiful layered shapes. Paige Evans has done a bunch of them, butterflies and all that kind of stuff. The Scrappy Sisters posted a beautiful one on a little group that I'm part of for their Scrap September that was hearts, and behind the hearts was some black swipes of black paint, and so I kind of liked that idea too. So I just thought it would be fun, and I don't have that many punches, so the square just works for me because obviously you can cut squares pretty easily. But I did find that postage stamp punch as well, so I'm going to end up using that too. So yes, it's not quite a square, but I think it works out just fine. So I punched out a whole bunch of my patterns, laid them out on the paper so I had a good idea of the size of the shape I was going to get on my paper, and then I just gave myself some guidelines with my pencil so that I could paint my swipes in the background. Now on that original layout that I saw, there were just individual swipes of black paint behind each of the hearts, but because the heart has a shape that kind of lets some of that color pop out from behind, I think that worked really well. But with the squares, they take up a little bit more area, surface area, and so I think this was just for me anyways, felt like it was a better idea just to go ahead and paint that whole section. So I wanted those guidelines because it kind of helps me to fit my pieces back together, but it also meant that I didn't go too wild with any of the paint. I wanted to make sure that that paint just barely poked out along the edges and that you just saw little bits of it in the spaces in between all of my diamonds. They're not squares, I turned them into diamonds. So while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and punch out my little postage stamps. And you'll see here I kind of put a few of them together. My plan was to do a big square and then put a vellum square next. I didn't have a medium-sized square. Actually, I think I do have a square punch that could have worked for my medium square, but it was actually downstairs, and I was doing this late at night because I wanted to get that paint drying overnight, and my daughter was having a sleepover with her friends, so I didn't want to go downstairs where they were and disturb them just so I could get a square punch. Yeah, so I layered them up like that, and I kind of like that. So I have one square that's really perfect with nice straight edges, Then I have that vellum square that's kind of hand cut and a little bit wonky. And then that top one isn't even really a true square, and it has the scalloped edges. So I kind of feel like that fits my personality a little bit, and the personality of the photo, where everything's just not quite perfect. Actually, it kind of fits the personality of this collection too, because there's so many just not quite perfect elements to this, hand-drawn lines and strips of that kind of look like they've been, a paintbrush has been used. I'm tripping over my words. Strips that look like they've been painted on, and just, yeah, I feel like it just worked well with the whole feel of this layout. So this is the next day. As you can see, my paint has dried. I ran it through my sewing machine very, very messily, because if you have followed me for a while, you know I have a love-hate relationship with my sewing machine. Sometimes it wants to work and sometimes it doesn't. And I can never really figure out why. It has something to do with the bobbin. And yes, I have watched every single video that has ever been made on YouTube telling me about the thread hook and telling me about all this stuff. I have called Genome. I don't know. So when it works, I try to sew everything. And when it doesn't work, it gets stashed away and we don't see it for months and months and months. But today, for some reason, I was having some good luck. So after I sewed through all of my little diamonds, I also sewed on that background. I didn't want to tempt fate and do any back stitching or anything like that. So it's pretty messy. So on the back, I just taped it with washi tape to make sure all of those stitches stay in place. And I will cut down some of those threads in the front too. But I wasn't sure at first. I wanted to kind of put it together and see how much of the threads poking out looked good. So I went ahead and matted my photo as well, just to give it a bit of a helping hand to stand out from all of these patterns that are going to be in the background. And now I can go ahead and cut apart my little diamond chain. And I don't really have a plan for how I'm putting these down. I'm just placing it one at a time, you can see there. So I feel like this is an area where if I put too much thought into it, then I get a little bit nitpicky and I start paying attention to the patterns and the colors, and I move things around, and I'd rather just kind of plonk things down where they come up. I feel like that is just, I don't know, that just is a nicer look for me, and you end up with something that's super random anyways, and you didn't have to spend any time worrying about it. So these are all just being placed down. You can see I'm bending some of them up, but right behind the photo, I don't want those ones to be bent up too much. So that's why I keep putting my picture there, just to kind of double check and see how many of them the photo is going to be touching. And that's kind of the basic shape that I've got going on here. So what I found worked the best for putting these down, and there you can see, yeah, I do cut my little ends a little bit. I just found the center on all of my edge pieces. So I just used my ruler again and kind of roughly found that center and stuck those down, and then everything else fits together like a puzzle piece. So it actually comes together really, really quickly once you start sticking them in place. There are those super cute flare buttons. I love them. So I just picked out 3 of them to put onto a diamond. And then I still, if you can believe it, have some of these awesome cork hearts that come from KaezMum scraps. I don't think she makes the cork shapes anymore, but Jody, I love them so much. You know I love them. I've mentioned it before. I just like how really thin they are, so they work well for traveler's notebooks and Project Life and other projects where you want a little bit of dimension, but not too much. So I love them, and I'm going to use 3 here And I think that it's a really good element to put down too because it's different from everything else on the page. So different texture, also a different color. And so with so many busy patterns, the hearts are kind of a nice place to give your eye a bit of a rest and just take in everything that's around it. But of course, the cork is kind of an organic, natural, neutral color too. So it isn't really adding a competing color into the mix. So I glued down the flare with the double-sided tape, and then I glued down the cork hearts with my Scotch tacky glue. And now I still have some of these freckled fawn little triangle enamel shapes. So I put 3 black ones in there. Every little diamond is going to end up with something on top. And then those white enamel dots, those actually come from Michael's, and I'm still working through those too. So those will go in the last little diamonds that don't have anything on them. And I wanted to have something on top of each one because, again, it gives your eye that focal point and that place to rest. And then as you're looking at the layout, you're kind of jumping to each square and taking in all of the patterns. And my last little element, because it wouldn't be a Jen layout if I didn't add them, are some KaezMum scrap sequins. This is not the sequins pack that goes with the kit. This is actually, I think it might be called Tuxedo or Black Tuxedo. It's kind of a New Year's themed kit. But I really liked those super big black sequins. So I'm going to put 3 of those and 3 little tiny white ones into each of those corners. And then a tiny black one onto each of the cork hearts. And I'm going to finish it up with my title. I just have, these are the Mistable chipboard thickers from Heidi Swap, and I had them out from another layout. And so I thought, you know what, these work. I'm going to keep them white. And I named my layout September Snow Cuties. I used the Z because I was out of S's. And I have to fix a couple of these letters. I didn't have any T's left, so my I's are going to turn into T's. Is that it? Oh, yes, and the C obviously was a G that I had to cut apart too. So, this was actually, yeah, it was our snowfall. In 2014, it snowed in September. It snowed enough that we had to pull out all the winter stuff for the kids. This was our first year with the boys being home, so we didn't even have snowsuits for them. We had to run around and find snowsuits for them and boots, and we made snowmen. There was a lot of snow. And then just a quick splash of, this is the Shimmers paint. I had it already in that little paint palette, and so I just gave it a quick squirt to reactivate it. And it's sort of clear and has just a little bit of shimmer to it. And so I splattered that around too. So as it dries, you'll just see a little bit of glitz. And I love it. That's my layout. If you have any questions for me, please leave them down below. And you can use discount code DTGEN at checkout to get 10% off of your next Wild Whisper purchase. All the details will be down in the description box. Until next time, happy scrapping. Bye!